What's up, guys? It's MB Boxing, and today I'm going to be predicting the outcome of Jared Anderson versus Martin Bakole, and this is going to be a 10-rounder in the heavyweight division, and this fight is going to be Saturday, August 3rd from the BMO Stadium in Los Angeles, California, and this fight is going to be broadcasted on DAZN pay-per-view. And to get both fighters' resumes, Jared Anderson, fighting out of the United States, holds a record of 17 fights, 17 wins, no losses, with 15 wins coming by way of knockout. He is currently ranked number 7 by BoxRec in the heavyweight division. He is 24 years of age, stands at 6 feet 4 inches tall, and has a 78.5-inch reach. So Jared Anderson, he started rising up, obviously, in that kind of 2020 COVID bubble stage back at Top Rank when they did those kind of indoor fights there. Or obviously all the fights are indoor, but in that little space they called the bubble at the MGM Grand. He had multiple fights there. Specifically, he had 5. He had 5 fights there from 2020 to 2021. And yeah, he really kind of rose up there, defeated some lower level guys, but just looked really, really good. Got some early knockouts until he started to really step it up. He started to fight on some high level cards, fought on the Tyson Fury versus Deontay Wilder 3 pay-per-view. That was really his big sort of coming out party, as you could say, in the heavyweight division. He stopped Vladimir Tereshkin in 2 rounds in that fight. Then he was able to knock out Alexander Teslenko and Miljan Rovkanin relatively early, and those guys are lower-level guys that just had really good records. But then in his last couple of fights, he was actually able to step it up in competition and defeat some decent-level names. No one, obviously, that's a world beater, but he was able to get some decent wins. He was able to destroy Jerry Forrest, who's known as a pretty tough fighter, destroyed him in 2 rounds. Then he also was able to dominate George Arias, who's also a decent-level fighter, probably like a top 30, top 40, like a top 50 level heavyweight, those guys are. And he stopped George Arias in 3. And then this was probably his best win to date. He defeated former heavyweight world champion Charles Martin via unanimous decision, but this was definitely by far his worst performance in his toughest fight. Martin was able to rock Jared Anderson multiple times in this fight. Despite Anderson winning comfortably on points, he got rocked multiple times and wasn't able to get the job done, despite many people thinking he was going to get that stoppage. And Martin stepped in on like a week's notice, so it was kind of a shaky performance for him, for Anderson there. But since that Martin fight, he was able to defeat Andrew Rudenko by stoppage in the 5th, and he was able to defeat Riyad Murray by unanimous decision, and what was kind of not really the most impressive performance, despite defeating Riyad Murray pretty wide, or very wide, obviously, on the scorecards. 2 judges having it a shutout, 1 having a 99-91. So, Jared Anderson obviously is a rising heavyweight, and he's very, very active. But to get his opponent's resume, Martin Bakole, fighting out of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, now residing in the United Kingdom. He holds a record of 20 wins, 1 loss, with 15 wins coming by way of KO. He is currently ranked number 10 by BoxRec in the heavyweight division, so 2 kind of top 10 level heavyweights clashing. Very, very good, obviously, on paper. He stands at 6 feet 6 inches tall, and he's currently 32 years of age, and BoxRec does not have his reach listed. But obviously, to get into his first ever loss of his career, it was an upset where in the 10th and final round, he got stopped by Michael Hunter in 2018. I do remember that one. It was a pretty solid fight before the stoppage. Obviously, Bakole did have a shoulder injury, but then he was just kind of battered, really, in that 10th and final round, and rightfully stopped. He was getting battered in that 10th round. But after that Michael Hunter defeat, he did have a solid comeback win where he stopped Mariusz Wach in his home country of Poland, in front of Wach's home country, getting that stoppage win in the 8th round. Pretty impressive, despite Wach being known as a guy that loses to the higher level heavyweights. But after that Wach fight in 2019, in late 2020, he was able to get a decent level win, defeating Sergey Kuzmin by unanimous decision there. Then after another sort of lower level win, he was able to get a very, very good upset win, defeating Tony Yoka, handing him his first ever loss, winning via majority decision in France. that was a very good win for Martin Bakole, obviously. That fight should not have been a majority decision. Bakole really dominated him through and through. And then after that Tony Yoka fight, he got some very solid level wins, knocking out high-level amateur Ihor Shevadzutsky in the third round. And then in his most recent fight, he got a very impressive win in October of 2023. Brutally, just kind of, he dominated and stopped Carlos Takam in the fourth round. Just battered him, obviously, in that fourth to get that stoppage victory. Leading up to the stoppage, the fans on BoxRec did have Bakole up 29-28, but in that fourth round, he got a very good stoppage. And Bakole has seemed to be on an upward spiral, obviously, since that loss to Michael Hunter 6 years ago. So, really, to get into my opinion on this fight, I think it's probably the most closely contested fight. It should be the most closely contested fight and most kind of hard to predict, in my opinion, on this card. And it's a very, very big card, obviously, with some great fights on there. So I do recommend everyone really watching this. In my opinion, like I said before, it's really a tough fight to predict. You either have to go with Jared Anderson, who's looked good, obviously, against lower-level opponents, or you have to go with Martin Bakole, who has been there, done that, has been tested recently against some good guys, defeated fellow prospect like Tony Yoka, defeated Takam, most recently, obviously, even though he did take that loss to Hunter years ago, but he has two very, very good level wins in the past 2 years. So, that really stacks up against, obviously, Anderson's resume most recently, where he had a shaky performance against Charles Martin, and also, even though defeating Riyad Murray didn't really look as vicious and as just as destructive as he should have, obviously, against Murray. But in my opinion, like I said before, just a very, very close fight. And I really think that it's just the toughest fight to predict on this card. I got to look up the odds really quickly right here. But I think, it should be extremely, extremely close. As of now, I'm filming this video on July 30th. But, it should be relatively close odds for this fight. And I believe that Anderson might be a slight favorite in this one. I'm looking at oddschecker.com. They do have Jared Anderson as a minus 190 favorite as of July 30th. And, that definitely does check out. This fight is almost even money. Some have him a 2-1 favorite. FanDuel has Anderson a minus 190 favorite. Caesar Sportsbook obviously has Anderson also a slight favorite, 2-1 favorite here. But, really, really close odds for this fight. And DraftKings has Anderson a minus 195 favorite as of when I'm filming this. So, very slight odds in favor of Jared Anderson going into this fight. And I'm going to have to kind of disagree with that. And I think we're going to see an upset here. I think this moment will kind of be too big for Jared Anderson. Leading up to his fight with Charles Martin, his mental state didn't look too great. I believe he was sobbing. I can't remember what fighter it was. It might have been Roy Jones Jr. he was with, but he was sobbing, and he was just talking about how he just kind of doesn't want to do it. He obviously fights for his family. That's really the main thing he fights for. I believe he said he really just fights for his mom to give her a better life and his family overall. But, he seemed really shaky in his mental state going into that fight. And overall, I don't know if he's dealing with a lot. He's obviously dealing with a lot of pressure for this fight, so that could definitely add up and definitely pay a toll on this one. And I think that's what we're going to see. I think this moment might be too big for Jared Anderson. And how I see this fight going down, I think it could be pretty similar to what we saw with Ajit Caballel and his most recent wins, where he stopped Frank Sanchez in an upset, and he also stopped Arslan Bekmambetov in an upset. We're going into the fight. Caballel was a decent underdog, but people weren't really counting him out, and they saw that in there as Sanchez and Makhmudov couldn't deal with the mental and physical pressure, obviously, in those fights, and they got broken down. And I think that's what we're going to see here. I think we're going to see another rising heavyweight fall and lose their O, as I think that Martin Bakole, he obviously fights with that high pressure style. Jared Anderson, he's pretty versatile. We could definitely see him fighting off the back foot a bit, but I don't think he'll deal too well with a heavy guy, a huge guy like Martin Bakole really pressing into him. I mean, in Bakole's last fight, he weighed in at 300 pounds when he fought Takam. And before that, he fought at 280, 275. So, I mean, he's really a heavy, big guy, and I think he's going to wear down Jared Anderson. But if Jared Anderson can deal with the pressure, I could definitely see maybe Bakole possibly getting winded if things aren't going his way, and we could see Anderson turn the tide. But I think in this one, the earlier rounds will be competitive. The first three will be pretty competitive, in my opinion, like first 3, 4, something like that, where Anderson might have some success landing some counters, having some good defense, possibly over Bakole. But then I think as the rounds go on, I think Bakole will obviously start to see more success. Will start to break down Jared Anderson and just batter him with some big, powerful hooks, some winging shots. I mean, he's the bigger man, obviously, and Jared Anderson's usually not the bigger man. I mean, the only time when he really fought, I mean, obviously he's fought guys like Teslenko who are big guys, but at the higher level, the only other big, like really big guy he fought, obviously, was Charles Martin, 6'5.5", 250 pounds, and he struggled in that one. And Bakole, he's 6'6" and almost 300 pounds. So I think that's going to be some trouble for him. And in that Martin fight, Martin was the one kind of on the back foot. And this one, I think we will see Bakole pressing forward on Anderson. And even though Bakole got stopped in his only loss, he still has a very solid chin. So I think that he will be able to take these shots from Anderson. If not, I mean, it's a heavyweight division. Anything could happen. Either of these guys, I think, probably could get stopped in this one, obviously. And I'm picking Bakole to end up getting the stoppage here. And like I said before, the first 3 rounds could be pretty competitive. It could be 38-38 after 4, something like that. But then as we get into the second half, like round 5, 6, 7, and whatnot, I think that Bakole will start to land heavier shots on Anderson. And like I said before, Anderson really hasn't been tested against a really high level, like kind of more active and young heavyweight. And obviously, Martin Bakole isn't obviously the youngest. I mean, he's 32 years old, but I mean, he's still much younger than some of the other top guys that Anderson fought, like Charles Martin, like Rudenko in more of his recent fights. So, I mean, I think Bakole will have some good success in the middle rounds, like 5, 6, and 7, and I think he could get a stoppage in those rounds. And although I said the first 4 rounds could be close, like I think the first 2 rounds, possibly Anderson could take. They could be back and forth. But then Bakole, obviously, I think he will continue on that pressure in those middle to later rounds, and I think that he will start to break down Anderson. I don't think Anderson will deal with the pressure too well as the rounds go on. I see Anderson kind of fading out. I see him kind of taking more damage in the middle to later rounds, and I think that Bakole would just try and keep him on the ropes and try and just batter him with body-head combinations, just body-head, and ultimately till Anderson falls or the referee steps in. And that's where I see this fight ending. I see it ending probably like round 7, 8, or 9, and I think that Martin Bakole will get the stoppage here. And I think leading up to the stoppage, like let's say it ends in like round 8 or something like that, I think he could be up in this one like 78, 74, something like that. A decently competitive fight really, really early, but then I see Bakole utilizing his experience at the higher level, and I think that he will ultimately break down Jared Anderson in this fight and get the stoppage victory in the kind of start of the later rounds, like 7, 8, and 9. And I think he will get a very, very good win here, which could possibly set up some more huge opportunities for Bakole in his surge since his loss to Michael Hunter. So if you made it this far in the video, I'd really appreciate it if you guys could go comment down below your thoughts on my prediction, if you agree, disagree, and I'd really appreciate if you guys go hit the like button and the subscribe button as well. So overall, I believe that Martin Bakole will pick up his career best win, as I think he will stop Jared Anderson later on in the fight, probably in rounds 7, 8, and 9, to record obviously his 21st victory and to hand Jared Anderson his first ever defeat, which would be an upset. And yeah, that's really it. I'm MB Boxing. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later.